It was Mother's Day, and I stood in my kitchen arranging delicate pink roses in a crystal vase, a vase I'd saved for years, reserved for special occasions. This was my gift to Christine, my daughter-in-law. The sunlight poured through the window, casting a warm glow over the polished surface of a hand-painted teacup, a splurge I couldn't really afford on my fixed income but thought would make her feel cherished. At 60, I still held on to the belief that I could make things better, that the right words and the right gestures could break down any wall between us. I just needed to try harder. My phone buzzed on the counter, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw it was David, my son. I wiped my hands on my apron and grabbed the phone, eager to hear his voice. "Mom," he said, his tone strained, pulling me from my thoughts. "Is everything okay, honey?" I asked, wiping my palms on the apron nervously. I could tell something was off. "It's about tomorrow," he began. His voice sounded so different, so flat, that my grip on the counter tightened, a knot forming in my stomach. "What about it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I already got Christine's gift, and I made those lemon cookies the kids love." A heavy silence filled the space between us. Then he spoke again, his words coming slowly, as if weighed down with something unsaid. "Christine thinks it'd be easier to keep it small this year. Just family." My hand froze and my heart sank. Just family? I had always been part of that family. What did he mean by that? "Christine and her parents are coming," David continued. "Just us and the kids." The words hit me like a cold wave. My hands trembled as I fought to stay calm, the roses in front of me beginning to blur. "Her parents?" I echoed, trying to steady myself. "Yeah," he said, a little quieter now. "They're staying the weekend." I swallowed hard, holding back the wave of frustration that threatened to overtake me. "I see. Well, I could just drop by briefly, just to give Christine her gift. I won't stay long." "Mom, please don't make this harder than it already is," he snapped, his voice tinged with frustration. "Christine's been really stressed with the house renovations and everything." The house renovations, the house I had helped them buy, the mortgage I had been paying ever since David lost his job last year. The mortgage that had drained my retirement fund month after month, keeping them afloat. "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Not really. Not at all." After hanging up, I stood there for a moment, staring at the roses I'd arranged so carefully. I'd always believed in family, in sticking together no matter what. That belief had carried me through the hardest days after Robert died, leaving me alone with a 12-year-old son to raise. It had always been about family until now. I picked up my car keys, determined to drop off the gifts. I wouldn't even go inside. What harm could there be in that? 20 minutes later, I pulled up to their 2-story colonial. The house was quiet, eerily so. No sign of anyone. Maybe they were out shopping for tomorrow. As I turned to leave the gifts on the porch, I heard Christine's voice, drifting out of an open window. "No, Mom. Don't worry about her showing up," she said, her laugh cold and cutting. I made sure David told her to stay away. I froze, the gift bag clutched to my chest, my heart pounding in my ears. "She's not invited this year," Christine continued, her voice laced with disdain. "Or any year if I have my way." I should have left then, should have turned and walked away, but my feet remained rooted to the spot. "You know what would be a real Mother's Day present?" Christine said, her words dripping with venom. "When that old witch finally goes into a nursing home. That would be cause for celebration." The gift bag slipped from my fingers, and the teacup set shattered on the concrete. I barely heard the crash, barely felt the shard cut into my finger as I bent down to pick up the pieces. The pain didn't matter. The words, they stung far worse that I drove home in a daze, tears blurring my vision. Once inside, I collapsed onto the sofa, the weight of Christine's cruel words pressing down on me like a heavy stone. For years, I had made excuses for her. She was stressed. She came from a different generation. She just needed time to warm up to me. I had swallowed her snide remarks at family gatherings, pretended not to notice when she deliberately excluded me from family photos, all the while giving them everything I could, financially, paying their mortgage, contributing to my grandchildren's college funds, going without so they could have more. As I sat there, my gaze fell on my checkbook, resting innocently on the coffee table. The mortgage payment for their house was due next week. I had already written the check, prepared to mail it out on Monday. I picked it up and stared at the amount, $100, nearly half of my monthly income. My fingers trembled as I held it, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Without another thought, I tore the check in half. Then, with a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in years, I called the bank. "Are you sure, Mrs. Harrison?" the representative asked, sounding hesitant. "This is a recurring payment you've been making for over a year." "I'm sure," I said, my voice stronger than I'd felt in a long time. "That payment stops today." When I hung up, I noticed something strange. My hands had stopped shaking. For the first time in months, I could breathe freely. Tomorrow would be Mother's Day, and yes, I would spend it alone. But it would also mark the beginning of my new life. A life where I would no longer sacrifice my dignity for people who saw me only as a burden to be tolerated. I looked around my small living room, my eyes settling on the photos of David and the grandkids. What would happen now? Would Christine allow me to see my grandchildren once she realized the money had stopped? The thought pierced my heart like a physical wound. But then, another voice, stronger and clearer, rose inside me. What kind of example am I setting for my grandchildren if I allow myself to be treated this way? The phone rang, jolting me from my thoughts. David's name flashed on the screen. It was too soon for him to know about the check, but maybe Christine had seen me outside their house. I let it ring, my finger hovering over the green button, but unwilling to answer. 3 days passed without a word from either David or Christine. 3 days of jumping every time my phone rang. 3 days of rehearsing what I would say when they finally called. 3 days filled with doubt, wondering if I had made the right decision. On the third day, I sat at my kitchen table, flipping through old photo albums. There was David at 7, missing his front teeth, proudly holding up a fish he had caught with his father. The memories of Robert's sudden death 3 years later hit me like a wave, knocking the breath out of me. My world had shattered. I was left alone, a 35-year-old widow with a grieving child and a mountain of debt. I traced Robert's face in the photograph, whispering to him, I did everything I could. I kept our boys safe, and I have. I thought back to those years, working 2 jobs, an administrative assistant by day, a waitress by night, just to keep a roof over our heads. I helped David with his homework between shifts, attended every school event, even when it meant going without sleep. I took out a second mortgage on our house to pay for his college education, all while never remarrying, even though there had been opportunities. My life had revolved around David, around giving him the future that Robert and I had dreamed of for him. When David met Christine in his senior year of college, I was thrilled. She was ambitious, confident, studying business, and had plans. What I didn't realize then was that her plans had always included my money, not me. The wedding had been the first sign. Christine insisted on a lavish affair at an expensive venue. When I gently suggested a more modest approach, she looked at me with thinly veiled contempt. "This is our special day," she had said, her tone dismissive. "We want it to be perfect. Don't you want that for your son?" "Of course I do." So I withdrew money from my 401k, taking a hit I couldn't afford, just to give Christine the wedding of her dreams. After they married, the distance between us only grew. David's calls became infrequent, and invitations for dinner were a rare occurrence. When I did visit, Christine always found a reason to cut the visit short. There was always something. She had a headache. The kids were overtired. They had forgotten other plans. But whenever they needed financial help, suddenly I was part of the family again. 3 years ago, when they wanted to buy that colonial in the upscale neighborhood, David came to me, his gaze cast downward. "The bank won't approve us for the full amount," he admitted. "But it's the perfect house, Mom. The best school district for the kids." I had offered to help with the down payment, draining the last of my savings. But then David lost his job during the tech industry's downsizing, and they couldn't make the mortgage payments. Christine refused to move to a more affordable house. That's when I started paying their mortgage, a temporary measure that somehow turned into something permanent. The phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. David's name appeared on the screen. This time, I answered, bracing myself. "Where's the mortgage payment?" His voice cut through the air. No greeting. No, "How are you, Mom?" Just anger. Hello to you too, David, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. Mom, the bank called. They said the payment is past due. What's going on? I took a deep breath. I'm not making the payment anymore, David. What? His voice shot up an octave. You can't do that. Actually, I can. It's my money. But we had an agreement. You said you'd help us. That was before I found out what Christine really thinks of me. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Before I learned I was uninvited for Mother's Day while her parents were welcomed. Before I overheard your wife say that me going to a nursing home would be a real cause for celebration. Silence hung heavy on the line. Were you spying on us? His accusation hit me like a slap. No, David. I came by to drop off gifts, and Christine was talking loud enough for the neighbors to hear. She didn't mean it, he said, his voice lacking the usual conviction. She was just venting. About what? I asked, my voice rising. What have I ever done to her except give and give until there's nothing left for me? Another silence. I could almost see David running his hand through his hair, just like his father used to when he was stressed. Mom, we need that money, he pleaded. We can't make the payment without it. Then sell the house, David. Get something you can afford. We can't do that now, he said, panic creeping into his voice. The market's down. We'd lose money and the kids' school. Those are your choices to make, I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. But I won't be paying anymore. Is this blackmail? His voice turned cold. You're using money to punish us because your feelings got hurt. Something inside me broke after everything I had sacrificed, everything I had given up. My son thought I was being petty. This isn't about punishment, David, I said, my voice trembling but steady. It's about respect. I've spent my entire life putting you first. I went without so you could have what you needed. I'm 60 years old, with barely enough saved for retirement because I gave everything to you. And in return, you let your wife treat me like I'm nothing. That's not fair, I added quietly. No, it's not fair. None of this is fair, David replied. But I'm done. I paused, gathering the strength to say what I needed to. I love you, David. I always will. But I won't set myself on fire to keep you and Christine warm anymore. I hung up before he could respond, before my resolve had a chance to crumble. Outside my window, spring flowers were blooming in my small garden. I'd planted those bulbs in the fall, a simple act of faith that I would still be here to see them flower. Now they were vibrant, the colors of life breaking through, a reminder that beauty can emerge even after the harshest winters. The flowers felt like a sign, a message that life continues, that even after hardship, something beautiful can still emerge. My phone buzzed with a text from David. We need to talk about this in person. I'm coming over tomorrow. I set the phone down without replying. Tomorrow would come soon enough. For now, I walked outside to my garden, pulling weeds from the soil, my hands working the earth with a sense of purpose. It was time to tend to my own life for a change. Time to see what might bloom if I redirected all that care and attention toward myself. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 o'clock the next morning. I'd been up since dawn, too anxious to sleep, rehearsing the conversation I would have with David. I smoothed my hands over my cardigan and opened the door. David stood on my porch, his face etched with tension. He looked older, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. Come in, I said, stepping aside. He walked past me without a word, his shoulders stiff with unresolved emotions. In the living room, he stood still, hands shoved deep into his pockets. Would you like some coffee? I asked, trying to inject some normalcy into this decidedly abnormal situation. I'm not here for coffee, Mom, he said flatly. I'm here about the mortgage. Of course. Not to check on me. Not to apologize for excluding me from Mother's Day. Just the money. I sank into the sofa, suddenly feeling weak, the weight of it all pressing down on me. Sit down, David, please. He hesitated, then perched on the edge of the armchair across from me. We need that money, he said. The bank called yesterday. If we miss another payment, they'll start foreclosure proceedings. I've made my decision, I said quietly. I'm not paying anymore because of some stupid comment made. He ran a frustrated hand through his hair. She was just having a bad day. This isn't about one comment, I said, my voice growing steadier. It's about years of disrespect. Years of being treated like an ATM instead of a mother. His eyes flickered, but he didn't respond right away. I opened the drawer of the side table and pulled out a small notebook. Do you know what this is? I asked, flipping it open. It's a record of every financial gift I've given you. The down payment on your house, the money for renovations, the monthly mortgage payments, the loans that were never repaid. I turned the pages slowly, watching his face change. It's over $300,000, David. Almost everything I had saved for retirement. His face flushed. You never said those were loans. You offered to help. And you never declined, I countered. You never even said thank you. And all the while, Christine was making it clear how little she valued my presence in your lives. That's not true, David protested, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. Last Christmas, I said, my voice steady but filled with hurt. She accidentally forgot to tell me dinner had been moved up 2 hours. I arrived to find everyone finishing dessert. David shifted uncomfortably. That was a misunderstanding. And the family vacation to the beach last summer? I continued, my voice tight. I only found out about it from Facebook after you'd already gone. We thought you wouldn't want to come, he mumbled. And your anniversary party? I asked, my voice a little louder now. I was seated at a table with strangers, far from family. Mom, you're being dramatic, he said, his tone defensive. Am I? I walked to my desk and returned with a stack of cards. Here are the birthday cards for the children. The Christmas checks, all returned with the wrong address written on them, even though my address hasn't changed in 20 years. David's face paled. I never saw those. Of course you didn't. I set them down between us. Christine made sure of that, just like she makes sure I rarely see my grandchildren. Did you know Lucy asked me, the last time I saw her, why I don't love her anymore? She said it was because Christine told her that's why I never come around. David's shoulders slumped. She wouldn't do that. She did, I said, leaning forward. David, I've tried for years to build a relationship with Christine. I've overlooked slights, swallowed insults, and continued to support you financially, but I can't do it anymore. I won't. The doorbell rang again, startling us both. Are you expecting someone? David asked. I wasn't, but I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who it was. I opened the door to find Christine standing there, her face a mask of righteous indignation. I knew he wouldn't handle this right, she said, brushing past me into the house. Her eyes immediately landed on David. What's taking so long? Just get her to sign the check and let's go. The tension in the room was thick, suffocating. David looked mortified, his hands trembling as he tried to find the words. Christine, he began, but she cut him off. Oh, stop it, she snapped, turning to me. Her arms crossed tightly. Look, I know you're upset about Mother's Day, but this is childish. We need that money. It's my money, I said, my voice quiet but firm. And I've decided not to give it to you anymore. Christine's face darkened, her expression twisting with anger. After everything we've done for you, she said, her voice rising. I couldn't hold it in any longer. I laughed. It was so absurd, so completely backward. What exactly have you done for me, Christine? Besides taking my money and keeping me from my family, I've tolerated you. Her facade cracked, her sharp retort spilling out. Do you have any idea how tiresome it is having you hover around, always wanting attention? David was fine until you started playing the poor, lonely widow card. David stood up abruptly, the coffee table rattling under the force of his movement. Christine, that's enough. No, it's not enough, she shot back. Your mother has been manipulating you for years with her guilt trips and her checkbook. Well, we don't need her. We kind of do need her checkbook right now, David said quietly. And just like that, something inside me broke. My own son, admitting that my worth to them was purely financial. Christine turned back to me, her voice suddenly sickly sweet. Priscilla, we all say things we don't mean when we're upset. Let's put this behind us. The mortgage payment is no longer my responsibility, I finished for her. Neither are you. Christine's mask of civility cracked completely. You smug, self-righteous old woman. Do you think David would even visit you if you weren't paying our bills? Do you think the kids would care about their grandmother if you weren't buying them expensive gifts? David stood frozen, horror written across his face. Christine, stop. No, let her continue, I said, a strange calm washing over me. Let her tell the truth for once. Christine laughed bitterly. The truth? The truth is you've been buying your way into our lives because you have nothing else to offer. No one else to burden with your neediness. And now you're throwing a tantrum because you finally realized we've been using you. The silence that followed was deafening. David looked as though he'd been struck. Christine's chest heaved with fury. I felt oddly liberated. Thank you for your honesty, I said, my voice steady. Now, I'd like you both to leave. Mom, David began, but I held up my hand, silencing him. I've heard enough, I said, my words clear and final. We have nothing more to discuss. Christine grabbed her purse. Fine. Come on, David. She's made her choice. David hesitated, torn between his wife and mother. David. Christine's voice cracked like a whip. David looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow, before he followed her to the door. But just before stepping out, he turned back. I didn't know Mom about the cards or what she said to Lucy. I swear. I nodded once, my heart heavy but resolute. Whether I believed him or not no longer mattered. When the door closed behind them, I collapsed onto the sofa, trembling, not from sadness, but with a fierce, unexpected pride. I had finally stood my ground. The mask had fallen, and now it was time to see what lay beneath. The weeks that followed that confrontation passed in a strange haze. My life seemed to move in slow motion, as though I were trapped in a routine that had lost its meaning. I went grocery shopping, tended to my garden, and watched television programs I could barely remember. The silence in my home was deafening. No calls from David, no pictures of the grandchildren, no requests for money. The quiet hurt, but surprisingly, not as much as I'd expected. There was a curious freedom in it, a weight lifting off my shoulders. One Wednesday afternoon, while folding laundry, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so my heart skipped a beat. When I opened the door, I was met by the last person I expected to see. Lucy, my 11-year-old granddaughter. Her bike was haphazardly tossed on the lawn behind her, and her face was red, eyes swollen from crying. Lucy, I gasped, pulling her into a tight hug. What are you doing here? Does your dad know where you are? She shook her head, tears spilling over. Dad and Mom are fighting all the time about the house and about you. I heard Dad tell Mom that the bank is going to take our house away. My heart sank. So it had begun. The foreclosure proceedings. I miss you, Grandma, Lucy whispered, burying her face in my shoulder. Mom said you didn't want to see us anymore, but I knew that wasn't true. I led her inside, settling her at the kitchen table while I made her favorite, hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. It was warm outside, but some situations just called for comfort food. Your mother wasn't telling the truth, I said gently, setting the mug in front of her. I've missed you terribly. Lucy nodded, sipping her cocoa. Dad's really sad all the time. He lost his job again last week. Mom keeps crying about the house. That explained why David hadn't called. On top of their mortgage problems, he'd lost his job again. It was the third time in 5 years. The tech industry could be brutal. Are you and Dad fighting? Lucy asked, her voice full of worry. Is that why you're not helping with our house anymore? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully, trying to explain something complicated to an 11-year-old. Your dad and I had a disagreement, sweetheart. It's about respect, about how family members should treat each other. Is it because Mom's mean to you? Lucy asked bluntly. I heard her tell Aunt Sarah that you were a controlling which you needed to mind your own business. I nearly choked on my tea. Out of the mouths of babes. It's complicated, sweetheart, I said finally. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and I love you very much. When I called David to let him know Lucy was with me, his relief was immediate. I'll come get her right away, he said, his voice tight. Let her stay for dinner, I suggested. I'll bring her home after. There was a pause on the other end. Christine won't like that. Christine doesn't have to know, I replied, surprised by the boldness in my voice. Lucy came to me, David. She's worried about you two fighting all the time. Another long pause. Then, fine, but I'll pick her up. I need to talk to you anyway. David arrived just after 7, looking exhausted. Lucy ran to him, chattering excitedly about the cookies we baked and how she helped me deadhead the roses in my garden. "Go wait in the car, sweetheart," David said quietly. "I need to talk to Grandma." Once Lucy was outside, David stood awkwardly in the living room, hands jammed in his pockets, just as he had weeks ago. But something had shifted. The anger was gone, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. "You lost your job," I said, my voice softer than I expected. He nodded, his shoulders sagging. "Budget cuts. They laid off 20% of the staff, and the house. We missed 2 payments." David sank into the chair, his hand running over his face in frustration. "The bank sent a formal notice," he muttered. "If we don't catch up within 30 days, they'll start foreclosure." I remained silent, watching him, letting the weight of the situation sink in. "Christine's parents can't help," he continued, his voice thick with regret. "Her dad lost most of his retirement in some investment scheme last year. They're barely getting by themselves." I had never known that. Christine always spoke of her family as though they were financially secure, as if their support was something I could always count on. "We're going to have to sell," David admitted, his voice low. "But, like I told you, the market's down. We'll lose money. Maybe walk away with nothing after the bank gets its share." "I'm sorry," I said softly, meaning it. I felt sorry for the stress he was under, but not sorry enough to open my checkbook again. That part was over. David nodded, his face weary. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled envelope. "I found these in Christine's desk drawer," he said, his voice quiet. "I was looking for the mortgage paperwork, and I found these too." He handed me the envelope, and I opened it. Inside were birthday cards, Christmas cards, each one from me to the children, all of them unopened. "There are more," David said, his voice almost a whisper. "Going back years. She kept them all. Said she was protecting the kids from my manipulative mother." My hands trembled as I looked at the colorful envelopes, each containing gifts and heartfelt notes of love that had never reached their intended recipients. The betrayal stung, and the silence between us was heavy. "I didn't know," David whispered, his voice full of regret. "I swear I didn't know she was doing this." "What about everything else?" I asked, my voice tight. "The way she spoke to me? The accidental exclusions from family events." He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I knew about some of it. I told myself she was just territorial, that she'd warm up to you eventually." He met my eyes again, and I could see the pain in them. I didn't want to see it. It was easier to believe everything was fine. "And now?" I asked, my heart sinking as I saw the toll this was taking on him. "Now everything's falling apart," he sighed heavily. "Christine blames me for not handling you better, for letting you cut us off financially. She says if I'd been a better son, none of this would have happened." The irony was almost too much to bear. After all those years of sacrifice, of putting David first, I was now being cast as the villain for finally saying enough. "What do you want from me, David?" I asked, my voice steady but full of uncertainty. "I don't know." He stood, restless, pacing back and forth. "I don't expect you to bail us out again. I don't have the right to ask that." "No," I agreed. "You don't. But I don't want to lose you," he said, his voice cracking. "The kids need their grandmother, and I need my mom." Need. The word hung in the air, cutting through me. All these years, I had been needed for what I could provide. Money, child care, emotional support, always giving, rarely receiving. "I spoke to a lawyer last week," I said, changing the subject and shifting the conversation to the house. David's head snapped up. "A lawyer? Why?" "Because I've contributed over $150,000 to that house," I said calmly. "The down payment came from me. I've been making mortgage payments for 18 months. That gives me a financial interest in the property." David paled. "You're suing us?" "No," I said firmly, "but I want to know where I stand legally." The lawyer said I could make a claim against any proceeds from the sale, or I could take partial ownership. "Partial ownership?" David repeated, his confusion evident. "I could put money in to stop the foreclosure in exchange for a legal stake in the house," I explained. "Not just a temporary fix, actual co-ownership." Hope flickered in his eyes. "You'd do that?" "I'm considering it," I said carefully. But there would be conditions. What conditions? He asked, his voice filled with desperation. First, I said, meeting his eyes with determination, I would have regular, unimpeded access to my grandchildren. He nodded quickly. Of course. Second, I continued, I would be treated with respect. No more forgetting to invite me to family events. No more intercepted cards and gifts. Another quick nod, but this time more somber. And third, I said, locking eyes with him, Christine would need to apologize. Not a fake apology, not a performance for your benefit. A genuine acknowledgement of how she's treated me. David's face fell. She'll never do that. Then I guess we've reached an impasse, I said, rising from my seat to show him out. Because I won't compromise on my dignity anymore, David. Not even for you. He left with Lucy, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I stood there watching them leave, feeling a strange sense of finality settle over me. That night, I sat in my garden as dusk fell, the cool air settling around me. Fireflies danced among the rose bushes, their tiny lights flickering in the soft twilight. I thought about the house, about my grandchildren, and about the complicated knot of love and resentment that still tied me to my son. I hadn't said no, but I hadn't said yes either. For once, I was putting myself first. And though it felt both terrifying and right, I knew it was the only choice left. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Can we talk again tomorrow? Just us. I typed back a simple yes. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms. The price of dignity was high, but I was finally willing to pay it. David arrived the next morning, alone. I noticed immediately that he wasn't wearing his wedding ring. A quiet pang of concern flickered in my chest. Coffee, I offered, trying to keep things as normal as possible, whatever normal was these days. He nodded, following me into the kitchen. We sat across from each other at my small table, the silence hanging heavily between us, both of us unsure of where to begin. Christine and I had a huge fight last night, he said quietly, staring into his mug. About the card she kept from the kids, about how she's treated you. I wrapped my hands around my own coffee mug, feeling its warmth seep into my fingers. I'm sorry it's come to this, David, I said softly. I told her what you said about helping with the house in exchange for respect and an apology. David looked up, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. She said she'd rather live in a cardboard box than apologize to you. Despite everything, that statement stung more than I wanted to admit. I see, I said quietly, trying to keep my emotions in check. I don't think she meant it, David added quickly. She's just proud and scared. She's never had to worry about money before. That's not true, though, is it? I asked gently. You said her parents are struggling, too. David looked surprised. How did you know that? You mentioned it yesterday, that her father lost his retirement savings. You told me, I explained. He frowned, confusion crossing his face. I didn't know about that until last week. Christine always said her parents were doing great, that they were self-made, unlike you. Who? I pressed. What do you mean, unlike me? David stopped abruptly, and I saw his cheeks flush. Coasted on Dad's life insurance and played the victim card, he admitted, looking ashamed. I nearly laughed, but it wasn't funny. Robert's life insurance had barely covered the funeral expenses. Everything I had, I'd earned through decades of hard work. David, I said quietly, your father's life insurance was $25,000. It paid for the funeral and kept us afloat for about 3 months. After that, I worked 2 jobs to support us. I know, he said quietly. I remember. Then why would you believe her? I asked. Why would you let her say those things? He had no answer for that. I shifted the conversation, changing the subject to something that felt more pressing. Where are you staying? I asked, noticing how restless he seemed. At a motel near work, he replied, giving a hollow laugh. Well, near where work used to be. I told Christine I needed space to think, he continued. And the kids, they're with her. I'm going to see them this weekend. I was hoping you might come with me. They miss you. My heart leapt at the thought of seeing my grandchildren, but caution held me back. What about Christine? She'll be at her yoga class. It's the one thing she won't give up, even with our money problems. So, we're sneaking around behind her back? The idea didn't sit well with me. That's not a solution, David, I said, shaking my head. I know, he admitted, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so reminiscent of his father that it made my heart ache. But I don't know what else to do. She won't bend and you won't bend and the kids are caught in the middle. I sighed deeply. He was right about one thing. The children shouldn't suffer because of adult conflicts. All right, I agreed reluctantly, but only this once. After that, we need a real plan. Thank you, he said, looking both relieved and hesitant. Then he paused, as if unsure how to continue. Mom, about the house, what exactly did the lawyer say? That I have options, I answered carefully. Given how much money I've put into it, I could make a legal claim. Would you? His voice was small, hesitant. I understand if you want to, but it would, he trailed off. I mean, I haven't decided yet, I interrupted. But if I do help, it would be as a co-owner, not just handing over money. I'd need my name on the deed, David. He nodded slowly, considering my words. That makes sense. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. For not seeing what was happening. For taking your help for granted. I know, I replied softly. I've never doubted that you love me, David. But love without respect isn't enough. After he left, I went into my spare bedroom, which had slowly become a storage room over the years. Boxes filled with old photographs, Robert's books, and mementos from a lifetime together. It was time to go through them, to decide what to keep and what to let go. In one box, I found an old sketchbook. Art had been my passion before marriage, before motherhood, and before the countless responsibilities that had consumed my days. I used to be good enough that my high school art teacher had encouraged me to apply to art school. Instead, I'd taken the practical route, earning a business administration degree, meeting Robert and marrying at 22. The sensible path, the expected path that I flipped through the yellowed pages of the sketchbook, surprised by the talent still evident in those old drawings, portraits, landscapes, still lives, all rendered in careful charcoal strokes. Why had I stopped? On impulse, I drove to the art supply store downtown. The owner, a woman about my age with silver hair and paint-stained fingers, helped me select pencils, charcoal, and watercolors. Getting back into it? She asked as she rang up my purchases. After 40 years, I admitted. I don't know if I still can. She smiled, handing me the bag. It's like riding a bicycle. The muscle memory is there, waiting for you to wake it up. That evening, I set up a small easel by the window and began to sketch the view of my garden. My strokes were hesitant at first, rusty from years of disuse. But gradually, as the sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, something inside me stirred. Something woke up. The next day, I visited the community center and discovered they offered art classes 3 times a week. Without hesitation, I signed up. My stomach fluttered nervously. When was the last time I'd done something purely for myself? By the end of the week, I'd attended my first class, Watercolor Basics. The instructor, a gentle man named Ellis, with kind eyes and endless patience, praised my natural sense of composition. You've done this before, he said. I nodded, unable to explain the deep, complex emotions his simple acknowledgement stirred in me. In class, I met Martha, a widow like me, who invited me to join her and some friends for coffee afterward. To my surprise, I agreed. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, filled with the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Martha's friends, Judith, Eleanor, and Doris, welcomed me without hesitation, drawing me into their conversation about books, politics, and the upcoming art exhibition at the local gallery. You should submit something, Judith suggested when I mentioned I was picking up art again. The deadline's not for another month. Oh, I couldn't, I protested. I'm just a beginner again. We're all beginners again at something, Eleanor said wisely. That's the beauty of our age. We get to reinvent ourselves. Reinvention. The word lingered in my mind as I drove home, as I prepared for bed, and as I lay awake thinking about the weekend, about seeing my grandchildren, about the house, about Christine, and all the tangled threads of family that still bound me. Even as I was discovering this new part of myself, perhaps for the first time in years, maybe ever, I wasn't defined solely by my roles. Mother, grandmother, financial supporter. I was becoming something else, something more. I was becoming myself. A year passed, bringing changes I could never have imagined during that terrible Mother's Day when Christine's words had shattered my illusions about my place in my son's family. Now it's Mother's Day again. The morning sun streams through my kitchen windows as I arrange a bouquet of tulips from my garden. The house smells of cinnamon and sugar, the scent of homemade rolls rising in the oven, a recipe I'd perfected over the winter. The doorbell rings and I smile, already knowing who it is. Grandma. Lucy and James rush in, arms outstretched, eager for hugs. Behind them stands David, holding a wrapped package and sporting a sheepish grin. Happy Mother's Day, he says, kissing my cheek. Something smells amazing. Cinnamon rolls, I reply, accepting the gift. Your favorite. Lucy tugs at my hand, her eyes wide with excitement. Grandma, wait till you see the painting I made at school. Dad brought it for you. I can't wait, I say, genuinely thrilled. At 12, Lucy has shown a remarkable talent for art, a gift I've nurtured with supplies and lessons. As we settle in the living room, now brighter with my watercolor landscapes hanging on the walls, I can't help but marvel at how much has changed. The house, the beautiful colonial that David and Christine once lived in, had gone into foreclosure after all. Despite my lawyer's assurance that I had a valid claim on the property, I chose not to pursue it. Some prices were too high, even for justice. David and Christine had separated 2 months after our confrontation. The strain of financial stress and exposed lies proved too much for their marriage. Christine moved in with her sister in California, taking the children with her. David found an apartment near his new job, a step down from his previous position, but steady work at a smaller tech company. The separation wasn't easy on anyone. The children called me occasionally, their voices full of confusion and hurt. Surprisingly, Christine hadn't poisoned them against me. Perhaps losing everything had humbled her, or maybe she simply lacked the energy for continued conflict. David visited them monthly, and gradually, a co-parenting routine emerged. Then, 6 months ago, Christine announced she'd met someone new. She wanted to stay in California permanently, but was willing to let the children spend summers and holidays with their father. David had been devastated by the finality of his marriage ending, and by the prospect of seeing his children only part-time. Yet, he'd also found a strange new resilience. Mom, he called me one night, his voice stronger than I'd heard in months. I'm going to ask for full custody. Are you sure? I asked, concerned about what that would mean for him and for the children. I'm sure, he said. Christine's not a bad mother, but her life is going in a different direction now. And the kids miss home, their friends, their schools. They miss you. That last part brought tears to my eyes. To everyone's surprise, Christine hadn't fought him. She agreed to let the children return to their father with generous visitation rights for herself. Her new relationship was moving quickly, and her new partner had children of his own. A ready-made family was apparently more appealing than fighting for custody of her existing one. And so, 3 months ago, Lucy and James came back home with their father. David had found a modest house to rent, not far from mine. And just like that, I was back in their lives, not as a checkbook, but as a real grandmother. I picked them up from school sometimes, taught Lucy how to paint with watercolors, and helped James with his science projects. Open your gift, Mom, David urges, pulling me from my thoughts. I unwrap the package, revealing a beautifully framed photograph of me with the children. It was taken at the art show where one of my paintings had earned an honorable mention. We're all beaming at the camera. Lucy and James press close against me, my arms around them. The moment is captured forever, happiness sealed in amber. It's perfect, I whisper, feeling tears threaten to fall. David helps me hang the photograph in the place of honor above the fireplace, the bright colors of the image filling the space with warmth. The children rush outside to play in the garden while we finish preparing lunch. I got the promotion, David says casually, slicing strawberries for the salad. David, that's wonderful. I exclaim, genuinely excited. Why didn't you tell me right away? He shrugs, but I can see the pride in his stance. Wanted to save some good news for today. I'm so proud of you, I tell him, my heart swelling with pride. I couldn't have done it without you, he says quietly. Not just the practical help, but you showed me what resilience looks like. You showed me what it means to respect yourself. I squeeze his arm, grateful for his words, but something stirs inside me, something I need to say. I've been thinking, he continues, about the future. About buying a house again someday, when I've saved enough for a proper down payment. That's a good goal, I say cautiously, knowing we both need to be wary when it comes to money conversations. This time, I'm doing it right, he reassures me, reading my thoughts. No overreaching. No financial help from you. I never minded helping you, David. I remind him, I just minded being taken for granted. He nods, understanding. I know. But I need to do this on my own, for myself, and to show the kids that you don't need to live beyond your means to be happy. It's a lesson that took him 40 years to learn, but I'm grateful he's finally learned it. The children burst back in, holding dandelions they've picked from the lawn. For the table, Lucy announces, arranging them in a small vase with the seriousness of a professional florist. We sit down to lunch, a simple meal of quiche, salad, and my homemade rolls. Before we eat, David raises his glass of sparkling cider. To Mom, he says, his eyes meeting mine, for teaching us what truly matters. The children echo the toast enthusiastically, and I blink back tears as I raise my own glass, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. After lunch, while the children help David with the dishes, a shift I'm proud to see. He's teaching them responsibility now. I step out onto the porch. The spring air is soft with promise, and my garden is a riot of color. Martha will be picking me up at 3 for our weekly art group. We've been meeting regularly for months now, a circle of women supporting each other through life's transitions. Martha through her recent retirement, Judith through her husband's illness, and me through the reshaping of my family. I've found friendship, connection, and purpose in that group. My watercolors have improved to the point where a local gallery has agreed to display some of my work in their summer exhibition. It may be a small achievement, but it fills me with quiet pride. Inside, I hear the children laughing, David singing off-key to a pop song on the radio. The sounds of family, my family, rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect, not obligation. Last week, I received a card from Christine. A proper apology, years too late, acknowledging the hurt she'd caused. I appreciated the gesture more than I expected to, though I had no desire to resume any close relationship with her. Some bridges, once burned, are better left as ashes. The front door opens and David joins me on the porch, handing me a fresh cup of tea. Happy, he asks simply. I look at him, my son, who nearly lost himself but found his way back, who's learning, as we all are, that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. Yes, I answer truthfully. I'm happy. We sit in comfortable silence as the afternoon sun warms us. In the garden, the children are playing tag, their laughter drifting on the breeze. Inside, my new painting waits on the easel, half finished. Tomorrow, I'll add more color, more definition. Tomorrow, I'll continue creating the life I want. But today, it's enough to be here. Present, respected, loved, not for what I give, but for who I am. The price of dignity was high, but oh, how worth it.